All right, let's get right into it. We're going to break down this incredibly powerful speech that was delivered to a jirga, that's a traditional tribal assembly in the Khyber district of Pakistan. And look, this isn't just any old speech. This thing is a political firestorm. It really just lays bare these deep, deep grievances. But what's so important here is how it all ends, with a direct, organized challenge to the state itself. And that's a move that could have massive, massive implications. So, let's unpack how we got here.
So the speaker, he wastes zero time. He kicks things off with this incredibly powerful accusation, and it just sets the tone for everything else that's about to come. The message is clear, right from the jump. It's about betrayal. He's claiming that the lives, the security of his people, the Pashtuns, have been secretly traded away in some backroom political deal.
So, the big question is, how did things get so bad? Well, according to the speaker, this new wave of violence and terrorism, it's not random. Not at all. He argues it's the direct, calculated result of a conspiracy that started with a huge shift in national politics. Now this is where he really starts to lay out his case, piece by piece. He starts in April 2022 with what he calls the regime change operation. His argument is that almost immediately after that, a secret decision was made behind closed doors to let militants come back into the province. He says that he and other local leaders, they saw it coming. They tried to sound the alarm, but they were just brushed off, told it was all propaganda. And the result? Well, by 2023, those militants weren't hiding out in some remote mountains anymore. No, they were in people's villages, in people's homes. And you can see how this accusation builds into something even more serious. You know, for him, this isn't just some case of political incompetence. The speaker is directly accusing the state security forces of, well, at best, a complete and catastrophic failure, and at worst, of being deliberately complicit in this whole thing.
He really just boils it all down to this one single, piercing question. And it's a question aimed right at the security forces. It's not about politics or ideology, it's about basic logistics. How, he's asking, did these armed men travel through a highly militarized zone, right past all of your checkpoints, and end up at a civilian's front door?
And this is the whole foundation of his argument. He claims that for militants to get to those homes, they would have had to pass more than 50 security checkpoints. The implication is just hanging there in the air, right? He's basically saying there's no way this could have happened unless someone was looking the other way. It makes it feel less like a mistake and more like it was all part of the plan.
So what does this alleged plan mean for the people on the ground? Well, it's a devastating human cost. The speaker paints this absolutely harrowing picture of what life is like for ordinary people, who he says are now trapped between two incredibly powerful and deadly forces.
This slide just captures the impossible situation they're in perfectly. As he describes it, imagine militants show up at your door, they demand food. If you give it to them, the next morning the security forces show up and punish you, maybe even arrest you for helping terrorists. But if you don't feed the militants, they kill you, right then and there. It's this terrifying, absolutely no-win scenario. And the consequences he lists are just devastating. He talks about drone strikes on villages, jet bombings on civilian homes. He alleges that innocent people, even children, were killed and then publicly branded as terrorists after the fact. And on top of all that, his people were forced out of their homes in the dead of a brutal winter, an act he says the government then had the nerve to call voluntary. Now this is a brilliant moment in the speech. He doesn't just make the claim, he turns the entire assembly into a living, breathing witness. He asks the crowd directly, for a show of hands. And in that one moment, he's directly challenging the official story in real time, creating this powerful public testimony against what the state is claiming.
Okay, so beyond all the violence and the political accusations, there's another huge driver of all this anger: money. The speaker argues that his province and its people have been systematically cheated out of billions, with a B, of rupees that they are owed by the federal government. It's adding this profound economic insult to a very physical injury. I mean, just look at these numbers. They're staggering. The speaker's position is that the federal government owes the province of Khyber Pakhtunkhwa over 4,700 billion rupees, and that is not a typo. On top of that, there's another 52 billion owed for displaced people and specific aid that was promised to families to rebuild their destroyed homes. Well, that has allegedly just never shown up.
Let's just focus on that home reconstruction aid for a second. The amount promised was 400,000 rupees per family. To put that in perspective, that's roughly $1,400 US. Now imagine you've lost your home, everything you own, and you're promised that amount to rebuild your entire life. For so many people, that's a world-changing sum of money. But according to the speaker, that money was never delivered.
And then, right after stating that number, he hits them with this absolutely searing line. He contrasts this life-altering sum that was promised to a displaced family with the casual, throwaway luxury of federal officials, saying they spend that exact same amount on a single handbag for their wives. It's an incredibly bitter line, designed to just pour salt in the wound of injustice.
So this is where everything pivots. The speech completely transforms from a long list of grievances into a direct and really consequential call to action. The speaker puts a choice to the jirga, a choice that's going to decide their very next move.
And to really get the weight of this moment, we have to understand what a jirga is. It's not just some town hall meeting. It's a formal council where leaders come together to make collective decisions. And those decisions are considered binding on the entire community. So whatever verdict is reached here, it's a serious, serious commitment.
Right before the big decision, the speaker takes a moment to push back against these old, ugly stereotypes. He completely rejects this portrayal of his people as savages. Instead, he frames himself and his community as educated, patriotic Pakistanis who know the law and are now using their voices to demand the rights they're owed.
So, he lays the choice bare. After all the accusations, all the stories of suffering, all the financial claims, what do the people do now? Where do they go from here?
The first option is basically to accept the situation, Go back to your homes, many of which are destroyed, and just try to pick up the pieces and rebuild under the exact same conditions.
The second option is confrontation. Forget the damaged homes. Gather everyone together en masse and march on the nation's capital, Islamabad, to take these demands right to the front door of the federal government.
And the verdict is decisive. It's unanimous. The entire jirga just roars its approval for that second option. They will march. The decision is made.
But listen, this isn't just some emotional outburst. The speaker immediately lays out a clear, multi-step, strategic plan. First, he's going to tour all the other tribal districts to get them on board, to build a consensus. Then, he'll bring them all together for a larger Pashtun National Assembly. After that, he'll gather the people from the entire province, and only then, with a completely unified front, will they march to Islamabad to make their stand.
And that really leaves us with this final, critical question. This speech and this verdict have basically set a collision course between an entire region and its national capital. This is one of the most direct challenges to federal authority that we've seen from a provincial movement in a long, long time. And it just begs the question, what happens next, when all that anger stops being just words in a speech and starts physically moving down the road to the capital?